Hi there. Today I want to take a look at the differences between the English Standard Version 2016 edition and the English Standard Version Catholic edition. I'll focus solely on the changes in the Protestant Canon. There are approximately 150 changes in the ESV Catholic edition from the ESV Standard edition. Most of these changes are to do with the capitalization of the word Lord, in particular changing Lord in small caps to Lord in title case, or vice versa. Some are punctuation changes. For example, 1 Timothy 5:23, where the brackets are removed from around the verse where Paul tells Timothy to use a little wine for his stomach's sake. A couple appear to be mistakes. For example, in Ezekiel 48:10, measuring now has a capital M. In the book of Acts, many occurrences of council in lowercase are now council with a capital C. And finally, a small number of changes appear to be doctrine related. Let's take a look at the more interesting changes which I could find, and I'll leave the rest, for example the changes of the capitalization of Lord, to the document linked to in the video description. Now, let's take a look at Genesis 9:20. In the ESV, it says Noah began to be a man of the soil, whereas in the CE, it says Noah began to till the soil. I found this to be an interesting and almost random change. The closest to a rationale I could find behind it was that in the RSV, it says that Noah was the first tiller of the soil. In Exodus 3:14, where God says his name to Moses, I am who I am, it is in capitals in the ESV, whereas in the CE, it's now in normal case. In 1 Chronicles 3:1, Abigail is described as a Carmelite in the ESV, whereas in the CE, she is Abigail of Carmel. I wondered if this is perhaps to remove any confusion with the Carmelite order. In 2 Chronicles 32:22, it says that the Lord provided for them on every side in the ESV, whereas in the CE, he led them on every side. Led is a more literal rendering. For example, see guided in the NASB, or even the footnote in the NRSV. In Matthew 1:19, it states that Joseph had resolved to divorce Mary quietly in the ESV, whereas in the CE, send her away quietly. Other Protestant translations, such as the New King James and the NASB, use put her away. So it is an acceptable translation. But I wonder whether it may be motivated by doctrinal reasons, particularly the perpetual virginity of Mary. I don't know. In Matthew 1:23, Emmanuel was spelt with an I in the ESV and an E in the CE. Now the Greek does have an E, so that is a more literal translation in a sense. They are both literal from my perspective, and I wonder if that's perhaps down to Catholic usage of the word compared to Protestant usage of the word. In Matthew 18:22, Jesus says to forgive someone not 7 times, but 77 times in the ESV, whereas in the ESV-CE, 70 times 7. The CE does footnote the ESV reading, and the CE does match the RSV. In Luke 1:28, we have a slightly more interesting one. When the angel greets Mary, he says, "Greetings, O highly favored one," in the Catholic edition. Now, this change appears to be doctrinally motivated to me. Now, I'll state that I am a Protestant. I am not really familiar with Catholic doctrine or liturgy or lectionary use. But I do know that this verse is where the Hail Mary comes from. And it was a verse which, for instance, in the ESV-CE, Mary was addressed as full of grace. So I can't quite help but think that this may be doctrinally motivated. In John 5:25, Christ says in the ESV that an hour is coming. In the CE, he says the hour is coming. CE matches the RSV, and this change is also made in John 5:28. In John 17:19, Christ says, "And for their sake I consecrate myself, that they may also be sanctified in truth." Whereas in the CE, it says consecrated in truth. Now, both are acceptable words to translate the Greek. The ESV-CE does match the RSV, and if you will remember from my previous video on changes in the RSV editions, that the changing of consecrated to sanctified was a big thing in many passages during one of the early revisions of the RSV. In 1 Corinthians 5:1, Paul reports that this behavior is not tolerated even among pagans in the ESV or Gentiles in the ESV-CE. I found this unusual because in 1 Corinthians 10:20 and 12:2, pagans was not changed to Gentiles. But other Protestant translations, the New King James and the NASB, have Gentiles, but the RSV has pagans. In 1 Corinthians 7:25, we reach the final change I want to look at. Now in the ESV-CE, Paul says, "Now concerning the virgins," whereas in the ESV it was the betrothed. Now, the virgins is a more literal rendering of ton parthenon, and many English translations, however, have just virgins instead of the virgins. They don't translate the ton. This change perhaps sums up to me best the ESV-CE. Here is a change that seems to be doctrinally related. The virgins perhaps is looking, perhaps it's interpreted as nuns, the virgins. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's as we and many other Protestants interpret, that it's either people who are betrothed to be married or are daughters. I don't know. And that to me is the ESV-CE. I don't know whether the changes they have made were for good, sound, if I may call it so, Protestant academic reasons, or whether they were made for very particularly Roman Catholic reasons, for reasons required by their teaching, by their use of Scripture in the lectionary. I don't know. And that's where I'll hand it over to you. Let me know in the comments section what you think about these changes. Am I perhaps being too gracious and giving too much benefit of the doubt to the ESV-CE revisers? Or am I being too harsh? I'll see you later.